Greetings from India. It's a great honor and privilege for me to be a part of 7th International Scientific and Practical Conference on Psychological and Pedagogical Problems of Modern Specialist Formation. I'd like to thank the organizing committee and especially Dr. Pipenko Irna, Secretary, PPPSMF Conferences, for giving me this wonderful platform to express my views as a keynote speaker. I would appreciate all those people who are working behind the scenes to make this conference practically possible. I'm Samson K. Wilson, a research scholar in the Department of Pharmacology at Amrita Vishwavidyapeetham University, Kochi, Kerala, India. And at this moment, with all gratitude, I would like to express my opinion and views on the theme titled as Impact of COVID-19 on Global Education. While natural disasters, armed conflict, or social unrest have been disruptive to schools in countries around the world for decades, the level of educational disruption caused by COVID-19 pandemic is greater than anything in modern history. COVID-19 is wreaking havoc on the lives of young children, students, and the youth. The disruption of societies and economies caused by the pandemic is aggravating the pre-existing global education and is impacting the education sector in an unprecedented ways. At the peak of school closures in April 2020, 90 to 95% of students, or 1.6 billion children, were out of school worldwide, and still around 700 million students today are studying from home. In a context of huge uncertainty and with families and schools having to navigate across options of hybrid and remote learning or no schooling at all. In the vast majority of the countries globally, there is no end in sight to this uncertainty. As the world becomes increasingly interconnected, so do the risks we face. The COVID-19 pandemic has not stopped at the national or at the international borders. It has affected people regardless of nationality, the level of education, the income, or the gender. But the same has not been the case or true for its consequences, which have hit the most vulnerable in the hardest manner. Education is no exception in that scenario. Education is a particularly challenging issue in the context of the pandemic. On one hand, school environments risk high rates of COVID-19 transmission, and closures are seen as necessary measures to protect the public health. On the other hand, the linkages between schools and children's health, safety, and life prospects are considered also to be significant. School closures due to COVID-19 have brought significant disruptions to education across the world. While the entire world is currently in lockdown because of the COVID-19 pandemic, businesses have adapted with varying levels of success to work from home policies. The education sector is facing unprecedented challenges and needs to adapt and find solutions to keep the children motivated and in their route towards learning. How will the education sector and the educators deal to overcome these challenges? How will the children continue to learn even as school by necessity becomes a digital space? Let's have a look around at what's the impact of COVID-19. The school-going children are naturally the worst affected educational sector stakeholders. For pupils, the lockdown doesn't just mean reduced cash flow or a professional setback, it represents an interruption to their learning journey. And in the case of dropouts, it was the final straw for at-risk children who struggles to get an education at the best of times. What this means is, for millions of students worldwide, the lockdown has brought all education to a complete halt. On the other hand, a minority of students attending urban private schools are seeing their education continue through their standard digital platforms. Children below the age of 18 years do need parent support to do their basic stuff. Even then, their learning experience is considered below par. With schools already online for a few weeks or from a few months, there's enough data to suggest online school can help children of all age groups, but is not an alternative to the brick and mortar schools. To ensure the continuity of education, Despite the lockdown, higher educational institutions have sought to use technology and offer online classes and learning experiences as a substitute for the in class time. However, many universities struggled and lacked the experience and time they needed to conceive new ways to deliver the instructions and the assignments. Examinations were also affected, causing disruptions to students' learning trajectories and progression. Although many higher educational institutions offered online courses before the pandemic, few students considered it as a sole alternative to physical in-person learning. Students from privileged backgrounds, reported by their parents, and eager and able to learn could find their way past closed school doors to alternative learning opportunities. But those from the disadvantaged backgrounds often remain shut out when the schools shut down. This crisis has exposed the many inadequacies and inequities of our education system globally, from access to the broadband and computers needed for online education and the supportive environments needed to focus on the learning, leading to the misalignment between the resources and the needs. The lockdowns in respect to COVID-19 have interrupted the conventional schooling with global closures in most of the countries, the majority lasting at least 10 weeks to 12 weeks, 6 months also, while the educational community have made concerted efforts to maintain learning continuity in this period. Children and students have had to rely on their own resources to continue learning remotely through the internet, through the television, or through the radio, or through any other media. Teachers also had to adapt to new pedagogical concepts and modes of delivery of teaching for which they may not have been trained earlier. In particular, learners in the marginalized groups who do not have access to digital learning resources or lack the resilience and engagement to learn their own are at risk of falling behind. Perhaps most importantly, the crisis raises questions about the value offered by a university education, which includes networking and social opportunities as well as educational content. To remain relevant, universities will need to reinvent their learning environments so that digitalization expands and complements student, teacher, and other relationships. Reopening schools and universities will bring unquestionable benefits to students and the wider economy. In addition, reopening schools will bring economic benefits to families by enabling some parents to work. Those benefits, however, must be carefully weighed in against the health risks and the requirement to mitigate the toll of the pandemic. Teachers across the globe are scrambling, to find ways to continue teaching their pupils in a situation where physical contact is no longer possible. Again, class and social divides play a big role in determining how successful teachers are in teaching school children during the pandemic. Teachers at a premier private schools are tech savvy, so they have access to internet at home as well as other digital infrastructure required to craft and share course material. Unfortunately, it is not the same when it comes to a vast majority of teachers living in the rural areas of the developing countries. We have already seen a world without classrooms, but if more and more teachers are incapable of teaching in these circumstances, visualizing a world without teachers is disastrous. Now, how is this internet learning or the e-learning impacting already burdened parents? According to research reports, poverty and availability are major reasons behind school dropouts. Poverty is the first reason attributed, due to a family problem. Children who go to school are unable to help their parents out in their businesses or at their shop or at their home. This makes the parents to support their child during the best or hard of times. It's not clear right now of how parents of school children, especially in the rural areas, are reacting to the lockdown or the education of the child in this pandemic. Many of them are now unemployed and quickly running out of time or limited savings or already in debt. The lockdown presents problems even to the wealthier parents also in terms of having to set up their children e-learning stations at home, monitor themselves, monitor the kids round the clock and deal with the stress and all the other tantrums associated with it. School owners are going to see a major cash flow crunch because of this lockdown situation, and many schools, especially daycare operative facilities with a monthly fee structure, schools with a monthly fee structures, if this lockdown or if this pandemic continues to increase, these payments will dry up. However, expenses including rent, salaries, and all the other costs associated with running a school will stay the same. So many educational institutions are run as a not-for-profit or generate minimal profits as of now. This means that by and large they lack the cash reserves to deal with an extended shutdown period. Smaller schools around the globe are shut down permanently. School owners are forced to downsize and negotiate rentals since this looks like a washout year. While the governments of different countries have done a commendable job in enforcing the lockdown, maintaining strict measures, worryingly little has been said to date about their education strategy or the strategies that have taken to continue on with the education in their countries. The governments are taking time to deliberate on a strategy, hence getting a clear idea of what it is planning or what it could do to help the educators and school owners around the country. Last but not the least, an important point to remember: urgent and effective action is required to quell the impact of COVID-19 on the education globally. And we all together, let's play our roles, let's play our parts, because unity is strength, and let's defeat this COVID-19 pandemic in a collaborative manner. This is Samson signing off. I would like to once again extend my gratitude to all the organizing committee for giving me this time. Stay safe, stay healthy, protect yourself from COVID. Do follow all the protocols and regulations.